It's crossover Thursday. We'll talk with Kevin Oestreicher from Locked On Ravens about the injury and COVID ravaged team the Bengals face this Sunday.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco, along with your host, James Rapien. We'll be joined by Kevin Oestreicher from Locked On Ravens in segments 2 and 3 today. We're going to get an update on the many COVID cases in Baltimore, the many injuries in Baltimore, what's going on at quarterback, whether Wink Martindale will be less stubborn and adjust the way he plays against Joe Burrow. But before we get there, James, some exciting news, some accolades, and maybe a snub or two. We're going to talk
Pro Bowl. Go ahead.
Pro Bowl. No, that was it. Go ahead.
Pro Bowl is in. The ballots have been cast. They've been counted. And 1, 2, 3 Bengals have made the Pro Bowl. And let's start with, well, they're all first-time Pro Bowlers. So we'll start with Ja'Marr Chase. Mr. Number 1, 5th overall, is going to his first Pro Bowl as a rookie. Trey Hendrickson, Mr. I get a sack every single week and shake off, broken backs, is going to the Pro Bowl. As is Joe Mixon, who, look at me just mixing in the news, practiced in full on Wednesday after he shook off a sprained ankle and is going to his first Pro Bowl. And there's a bunch of things, but it is interesting. So Chase is the 5th Bengals rookie ever to be voted to the Pro Bowl at any position. He joins AJ Green and let's see, Isaac Curtis and Chris Collinsworth. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. Okay. So there were 3 other wide receivers. Lamar Parrish was the only non-wide receiver to be a rookie Pro Bowler, but it's still pretty cool.
Continues a rich tradition of high quality Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers. And there really is a rich tradition of really good wide receiver play in Cincinnati. Ja'Marr Chase, just going by the traditional statistics that Pro Bowl voters often use, and including fans, obviously got off to the torrid start this season, just torching everybody, including the 200-yard game against Baltimore that we'll talk about with Kevin in a little bit. But amongst pass receivers in the NFL, this includes tight ends because there's a couple ahead of him. Ja'Marr Chase ranks 9th in the NFL in receiving yards at 1,038. At this point, he ranks tied for 3rd in the NFL with Adam Thielen for touchdowns, receiving touchdowns behind Cooper Kupp and Mike Evans. And his average yards per catch is kind of hard to figure out the rating when you start to have cutoffs for how many receptions are required. But Deebo Samuel at 17.8 is the only guy that's really in contention here with an appreciable number of catches ahead of Ja'Marr Chase's 17 yards per catch. So some really impressive stuff from the Bengals rookie. Joe Mixon, obviously 2nd in the NFL in rushing yards, having a big year, 12 touchdowns, ranks 3rd in the NFL behind Jonathan Taylor and James Conner. So those guys makes a lot of sense. Trey Hendrickson, very easy. When you have that many sacks, you're going to go to the Pro Bowl. Joe Burrow, what gives? I get that the AFC is maybe a little bit tough to crack for the Pro Bowl, especially with the national love for Justin Herbert and then the cases that can pretty easily be made and have been made, I assume, for Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. But no love for Joe Burrow is a little bit surprising. I guess there can only be 3 quarterbacks, and Joe Burrow's touchdown pace has fallen off. But as we've discussed, he's been great this year. And I feel like this might be a little bit of a snub. I don't know. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And just to put a bow on the alternates, because I haven't gone into those yet. Joe Burrow and Clark Harris, both 2nd alternates. Then we have Sam Hubbard, Larry Ogunjobi as 4th alternates, and Mike Hilton, a 5th alternate. But, Burrow has a realistic path, I think, as a 2nd alternate to go to the Pro Bowl, depending on what happens. There's guys that turn it down all the time, and who knows with COVID and everything, if they're actually even going to have a game. I don't know if they've decided that or not this year. Obviously that did not happen last year. Either way, I agree with you. Like, you look at the AFC, I put Burrow on a high, like, the interceptions don't tell the story. I went on a radio station in Cleveland earlier on Wednesday afternoon, and guess what they asked about? The interceptions, even though I praised Burrow. Like, that's part of it is people see that and they're like, young quarterback turning the ball over a ton. And I just think he does so much. That's why he should be in the comeback player of the year race. And maybe at this point, maybe the favorite, even though he's not, according to any odds maker, including BetOnline.ag, the number one spot for all your betting needs. But I agree with you. Like, if I think you're comeback player of the year, or potentially that, and I think he very much could be that, could you argue that he should be ahead of Justin Herbert? Potentially, especially with what he's working with, because again, I think he's rising everybody up a bit and helping everybody get to a level where, because a lot of people would say this Bengals team's a year ahead of schedule if they win the division. And we'll see. Maybe he leads them to the division title. And if he does, then that'll certainly feel like a snub.
And sometimes what happens here is there's just that year of lag as well. Like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen are just assumed to be the best quarterbacks in the AFC, and Justin Herbert's a highlight reel. And so these things contribute, I think, to some degree as well. But Joe Burrow talked in his press conference on Wednesday about how he's now starting to feel like himself. He now is starting to feel comfortable in the pocket again, comfortable stepping up, comfortable running, comfortable doing all the things that made him separated him beyond just his ability to throw, the things that made him able to create off script. He's now starting to feel these things again. And he won't admit that he's playing better now than he's played all year. He probably thinks he's played pretty well this year, and he'd be right. But I just continue to be more and more impressed when we look at him on a snap by snap basis at the way he's moving, his continued accuracy, especially with this pinky injury, and that he continues to seem to get better every week. And I know he's a young quarterback who should still be learning, but he's been good this year, and I think he's still ascending. It's just the touchdowns and the stats haven't been as gaudy maybe, and that's part of what's happened here.
Yeah, I agree with that. The touchdown numbers, the stats in general, his yards and everything dropped down some. I will say that to me, and he kind of said it today, he is playing his best ball. He said he's feeling more comfortable, all of those things, kind of admitted it without saying it, but certainly from a physical standpoint is as comfortable as he's been post ACL injury. And then the other thing here, I'm going to answer my own question. The 2022 Pro Bowl is going to be televised on ABC and ESPN on Sunday, February 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern from Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. So there you go. There is a game. It does plan on being played, and who knows? Maybe Joe Burrow can sneak in. Speaking of snubs, though, if Mike Hilton, and I like Mike Hilton a lot, is going to be a fifth alternate, my guy Chido Awuzie can't get any love. Chidobe Awuzie has been better than Mike Hilton this year. That's not a take. I think Mike Hilton will probably say that. That's weird. Weird. The voting and stuff like that, like, doesn't take a brain surgeon or a football coach or a football evaluator to tell you that 22 has been the best cornerback on the Bengals.
The other one that really stands out to me is DJ Reader just can't get any love. Not listed there at all.
Totally agree.
Like, I know Larry Ogunjobi has 7 sacks this year, or whatever the official number is, and he's been fine as a flashy pass rushing 3-tech. DJ Reader he might still be the best player on the defense. Like, he's certainly in the conversation. He is the glue that makes the front 7 work. He is part of the reason that these guys around him, Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, and Larry Ogunjobi, are alternates or Pro Bowlers this year. And I mean, come on, what are we doing here, NFL? Let's figure out how to recognize quality nose tackle play. NFL fans, players, coaches, I don't care who you are. I don't know who's doing these votes, but DJ Reader's been great this year. And of all of the snubs, that might be the biggest one to me, because he's not even on the alternate list, and that's crazy. Coming up next, we're joined by Kevin Ostreicher, Locked On Ravens, and we'll do our crossover as we prepare for Ravens week number 2.
No one plays fantasy football to lose, and let's be honest, it might not just be fantasy football. Maybe you play fantasy basketball, all different types of fantasy. And with the fantasy football playoffs going on right now, maybe you're eliminated Well, Stat Hero is going to save the day, not just this week, but every week, because it's the first of its kind. It's daily fantasy sports where you play the house one-on-one, winner take all. And the crazy part is Stat Hero shows you their lineups before you play. So you know their hand. You can see what they have in their hand, and you just got to put together a team to beat it. It's a never before seen innovation of fantasy sports and sports betting hybrid that has Stat Hero players clocking odds that are over 4 times better than where you're going to get elsewhere. So check them out right now at stathero.com. And you can sign up for free right there, stathero.com/locked on, and use promo code locked on for a 100% deposit match. Again, it's simple, stathero.com/locked on, promo code locked on for a 100% deposit match. One last time, stathero.com/locked on, promo code locked on. Terms and conditions do apply.
The Bengals are taking on the Ravens this week. That means it's time on Thursday for another Locked On Bengals, Locked On Ravens crossover episode. I'm Jake Lisco, the co-host of the Locked On Bengals podcast with James Rapine, joined today by Kevin Ostreicher as we get into this Ravens-Bengals Part 2 matchup of the 2021 season. But Kevin, we need to start with COVID. Unfortunately, as the Ravens added 5 guys to the COVID list on Wednesday. Yes, it's easier for players to come off the COVID list now, especially if they're asymptomatic and vaccinated, but questions have to be out there at this point after 3 games were postponed last week, which the NFL wanted to cancel, by the way, until JC Tretter and the Players Union advocated for a postponement. Is this game going to happen on time? The Ravens apparently had 13 defensive players at practice on Wednesday. Kevin, what's the situation in Baltimore?
Yeah, the situation, Jake, is between injuries and COVID. The Ravens are down a lot of guys, and obviously the NFL is not going to postpone anything for injuries, right? This is a COVID situation where I think if guys are testing positive on Friday or Saturday for the Ravens, then you could probably hear some talk of postponement, especially if we hear some more news even on Thursday about 1 or 2 Ravens on there. You're right, 13 defenders, healthy defenders practice for the Ravens on Wednesday. That's just not enough. And the issue is it's also not just the active roster, it's practice squad players. And so you could say, oh, well, they can just call up guys on their practice squad. They don't have that because they are losing some of their practice squad defensive backs and some practice squad receivers. Now, you're right. If guys are asymptomatic and vaccinated, they produce a negative test, and all the pizzazz of the protocols for the NFL, they can come back. So it's going to be key to see who comes back over the next couple of days here. But if the Ravens don't have enough players, if they keep losing guys, and if it's a threat to not just the Ravens, but also the Bengals, if the Ravens and Bengals suit up on Sunday and there was a guy who tested positive on Saturday for the Ravens and he spread it to his teammate who plays on Sunday, but he hasn't been tested or this, that, and the other, it could start an outbreak in Cincinnati, which no one wants. And I think for this game in particular, you have to weigh just, a big divisional matchup with the health and the safety of these guys.
Yeah, it's wild. The thing about COVID that's so tough, and I asked Zach Taylor this on Wednesday, Chidobe Awuzie is on the COVID-19 reserve list, the Bengals' #1 corner. And it's not like you can do anything but hope and just kind of plan on them not being there until they get cleared and can come back. It's not like a sprained ankle or anything. And that to me is the juggle, right? Especially if you get into these outbreaks, what Cleveland had to deal with, what Baltimore is currently dealing with, is juggling everything and not just getting guys out there, but figuring out which guys could potentially come back, right? Like, is Sammy Watkins going to be out there? And he's not like he's the most important, but that certainly does matter, right? If you have Sammy Watkins versus you don't have Sammy Watkins, and that's just one of the many, like you said, Kevin. So that I don't envy John Harbaugh right now, I guess, long story short, because it's a tough situation.
Yeah, it is. And what COVID is now doing is it's running through positional groups. So, obviously you have those guys in meeting rooms together and whatnot. The Ravens, they conducted their interviews virtually yesterday on Wednesday. So they're in those protocols. But the Ravens have 3 outside linebackers at this point in Tyus Bazor-Odafe and Jalen Ferguson. Their defensive backs are shot due to injuries and COVID now. They played with about just two of their starters that they had on the docket for their 2021 season at the start of the year. They didn't have Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters. They had Chuck Clark in the protocol, Jimmy Smith in the protocol. They're adding inside linebackers now, core special teamers. It's hitting all their positions. And, if it gets to the quarterback position, it gets to another big position there, it starts spreading throughout the entire team. And it's not something you really want to deal with. For the Bengals guys, I am interested because this is a team that's done so well. They've used momentum extremely well this season. They're obviously now at first place in the AFC North, and a postponement could affect both teams in multiple ways. But I think for a divisional matchup like this, both teams are dealing with injuries. The Ravens, I could go on for hours about their injuries, but what are the Bengals dealing with on that injury front right now? Joe Mixon obviously is a talking point at this stage. How's he doing on the rest of the Cincinnati roster?
I don't think it's anything approaching the severity that Baltimore is dealing with. The big ones, I think, as James mentioned, Chidobe Awuzie on the COVID list, and that is truly a toss-up. But Trey Waynes did just come off of IR, so one of the two guys they were expecting to start for them at corner is currently available, and I don't know if Trey Waynes would be a starter if Cheeto were healthy because of, I can't believe I'm saying this, the play of Eli Apple, the midseason acquisition on the other side, as he's started to exceed expectations a little bit. But outside of that, the other big one is Riley Reif, the right tackle. He's on IR. He may or may not be back this year as he's dealing with a sprained ankle that was getting worse. They have a lot of injuries at the linebacker position that we talked about on Locked On Bengals yesterday. They're down to two healthy 53-man roster linebackers in Jermaine Pratt and last year's 7th-round pick Marcus Bailey. So it's a lot of practice squad guys for depth at linebacker. But by and large, the Bengals still a relatively healthy team. Joe Mixon is dealing with the ankle, but Zach Taylor seemed optimistic, said he would practice on Wednesday. Joe Burrow's talking about maybe needing offseason surgery on his pinky finger, but doesn't really seem to be something that is affecting him in games, at least not obviously affecting him in games. So he seems to be managing whatever that is quite well. So outside of those things, they're relatively healthy with the starters at the rest of the offensive line at this point, the rest of the wide receivers, tight ends, the defensive line. Trey Hendrickson had the back scare a couple weeks ago. He's back and seems to be in playing shape. The safeties are relatively healthy. So all things considered, I would say, unless I'm missing something, James, that you heard about today on Wednesday, I would say the Bengals relatively healthy right now in this game. And I think that the big question beyond COVID comes to quarterback, and Lamar Jackson still not practicing on Wednesday. And, there's apparently some talk on the internet about Lamar Jackson not being the best talk about the Ravens. We're going to rise above. We're not going to engage with that chatter. But is Lamar Jackson going to be healthy for this game? It sounded like there was some optimism, and then he didn't practice on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, I know the Ravens certainly hope so. And he did not practice on Wednesday. You're correct there, Jake. And the Ravens feel confident in their quarterback situation, regardless of who is out there. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is the better player. He is the starter in Baltimore. There's no quarterback controversy, regardless of what we've seen on the internet over these past couple days here. But it's nice to know that if Jackson isn't able to go, if he's at 60%, 75%, and the Ravens say, it's not worth the risk of re-injury, then Huntley has proven over these past couple weeks and in Week 11 against Chicago that he's someone who can lead this team to victory, can keep them in games. He's improved each and every week. He has a similar skill set to Lamar Jackson. So the Ravens offense doesn't have to change dramatically for him. He's struggled a bit with deep ball accuracy. He's had receivers open and he's overshot them or underthrown them at times as well. So he's no perfect player. He's still very young. But I still think if Jackson is at 80%, he's obviously the better player. And I think that the Ravens, that skill is what they need. But at the same time, the Ravens saw a situation in Week 1 with Ronnie Stanley, where Stanley was brought back from the ankle injury that he suffered in middle of the year in 2020, really gruesome injury. And he just did not look right at all. He clearly was not 100%. The Ravens put him in there. There are two things that happen when you put a guy back out there that's not 100% healthy. One, the product on the field just is not good enough to the point where it hurts the team on the field, whether it be contributing to a loss or negative plays or whatnot. And two, the risk for injury is real. And now Stanley is done for the season, and he will have played one game in the last year and a half by the time 2022 rolls around. So the Ravens are going to play it cautious. They've done that all season with their players. If Jackson plays, he gives the Ravens the better chance to win. But the key caveat there, it's if he is healthy for this Ravens team. And I think it's big because the mood in Baltimore right now, after 3 straight losses, they've lost their last 3 games by a combined 4 points. They're out of the playoffs completely now. If they started today, they were in the AFC North lead. Now they dropped down to number 8 and out of that playoff picture. So the mood in Baltimore is getting a little shaky right now. They want Lamar Jackson back because they know he's the better player. At least most of them do. And I know I'm one of those people. But I'm interested to hear, guys, what's the mood in Cincinnati right now? You catapult up to back in first place in the AFC North. This team has exceeded expectations this year. Joe Burrow's looking good. Jamar Chase obviously seems to be the right pick there in that 2021 draft. What's the mood like in Cincinnati right now as they head into a very pivotal matchup against these Baltimore Ravens?
I'm going to answer Kevin's question about the mood here in the Queen City. But first, I got to tell you about On Location, because Super Bowl 56 at SoFi is less than 100 days away. And On Location is the official hospitality partner of the NFL. It's the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. You can select your exact seats. Choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with NFL legends, 5-star LA hotels, and food by the great Wolfgang Puck. Visit onlocationexp.com/SB56 for more information, or search Super Bowl On Location. It's onlocationexp.com/SB56 or search Super Bowl On Location.
And I'm going to tell you a bit about BetOnline. They have you covered this holiday season. They have more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the college bowl season and the pro football playoffs. BetOnline store means your number one spot for all the sports action this season. You can head to the website or use a mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive that bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. So don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing new offers. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So, Kevin, you asked about the mood in Cincinnati, and it's different for a few reasons, right? It's uncharted territory for Zach Taylor, uncharted territory for this franchise over the past half decade in the playoff hunt, late December, first place in the AFC North as we're talking right now. And so I think people are excited, but they also almost have their guard up a little bit. And Sunday's a big game, I think, for the Bengals to show everybody, including fans in Cincinnati, that they are for real this year and that they aren't just a little ahead of schedule, and they're not going to just flirt with the playoffs and then let the fan base down and lay an egg at the end. And the main reason I would say that is their past couple home games. I mean, they're barely clearing 50,000 in attendance. And earlier in the year, you're talking 60,000 high, in close to sellouts. And that hasn't been the case over the past couple home games. And they lost both of those games for what it's worth, but they're coming off of a win against Denver. And so I think people are excited-ish, cautiously optimistic, but not enough to where they fully bought in that this team is going to make a playoff run. And you mentioned it, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, I think they have the talent to do so, but they've been so up and down, win 2, then lose to the Jets, and then get blown out by the Browns. And then you come back and you win 2 from the bye, and then you lose 2 at home. And so it's been a roller coaster of a season for Zach Taylor's crew. And I think if they win on Sunday, people will really start to taste it, almost, the potential AFC North division championship for the first time since 2015. So I think people are excited. I'm not saying you're not Bengals fans. Don't crush me. But I think that they're cautiously optimistic in their excitement because they've been let down before, and they want the Bengals to prove a little bit more.
Right, and what a huge game this is. I really think this makes or breaks the Ravens season, at least, because from a Ravens perspective, obviously Cincinnati won the first matchup. If they win the second matchup, they have that clear head-to-head tiebreaker. There's no debating. You also have Baltimore's division record move to 1-4, which is just not where you want to be heading into that week 16 matchup with the Rams at home, and then week 18 against the Pittsburgh Steelers at home in what could be Ben Roethlisberger's final game in the NFL, depending on the Steelers' playoff status. So I think for both teams, this is probably the biggest game of the season based off playoff implications, based off of saying, hey, look, we're for real. We're, pretenders, contenders this season for either. And I'm interested because the Ravens, I mentioned they've lost their last 3 games by a combined 4 points. The Ravens seemingly get in those close games. The Ravens do not let their fans off easy. It's always the heart is pumping, the blood is flowing. How have the Bengals performed in close games this season? If this was the fourth quarter, we're talking 4 minutes, 3 minutes left, 2-minute drill. How confident would you be that Cincinnati could pull off a victory or drive down the field or stop the Ravens on 3rd down based off what they've done in close games this year?
Well, in previous years, I would have said I'm not confident at all. Coming into this year, Zach Taylor could not buy a win in a close game. And his 1-score record was, one, a reason that there was some hope for regression this year, which we've seen a little bit. And two, was cause for concern that the coaching staff couldn't get the team into a place or into the right looks or into the right situations to close out games. More confident probably in the offense and the defense. Joe Burrow's been playing excellent football in the last few weeks and isn't really putting the ball in danger lately. They had a couple of turnovers that really killed them against San Francisco a couple weeks ago. Those both came in the punt return game. And Joe Burrow did end up putting the ball on the ground on a sack, but you're probably not in that situation if you can just catch punts. And now they've got a guy, Trent Taylor, up from the practice squad, doing a good job of catching punts and not putting them on the ground. The defense, on the other hand, is a bit of a mystery still. They've been good this year. Don't get me wrong, but they haven't necessarily had that clutch closeout gene trait consistently this year. In 2021, the Bengals, I believe, are 3-4 in 1-score games after the 1-score victory over the Denver Broncos last week when they were able to close out the game. But the Bengals simply were not scared of Drew Lock and that Broncos offense. And apparently rightfully so, as the Broncos went backwards on their last drive of the game when they needed a touchdown to try to take the lead, as that game was in the fourth quarter toward the end. So it depends on what kind of team the Ravens can field, I think, on Sunday. If it's Tyler Huntley and your 5th through 8th wide receivers and, your old man running backs, because everybody at running back for the Ravens has been hurt, well, then the Bengals might not be too scared of that, and fans might not be too scared of that on defense. But at the same time, the interesting thing to me is the Ravens have played all these close games this year. The Steelers have played all these close games this year, and the Bengals have blown these teams out 3 times combined, twice the Steelers, once the Ravens. And so is that going to happen again? Or are these teams, will Wink Martindale have learned his lesson? Will the Ravens offense have adapted to what they saw from the Bengals defense? But for me, the bigger question is, you've seen a little bit more zone defense from the Ravens in the last few weeks. I think there's some recognition that you don't have the dudes to play defense the way Martindale wants to play defense. And I thought that Martindale was stubborn the first time the Bengals played the Ravens and stuck with his guys and said, you know what? They're not going to keep beating us. They're not going to keep beating us. And then his guys just kept getting beat and Burrow kept punishing the blitz. Now, there's another interesting split that's Joe Burrow hasn't been as good against the blitz in the last few weeks as he was at the beginning of the season. What do you think we're going to get from this Ravens defense, assuming the game isn't postponed and there's like a reasonable return for some random amount of players? Is there going to be an adaptation from Wink Martindale in the defensive game plan from the Ravens?
Yeah, well, it's funny, Jake, you mentioned stubborn because Don Martindale has been called that before over the course of this season. Another example of that is in week 1 against the Raiders, where on Monday Night Football, you had a defense that really couldn't stop anything. And the Ravens weren't not blitzing in every single play. It was, cover 0, rushing 6, doing whatever. And the Raiders kept beating it and beating it and beating it. And Don Martindale, who was known to be a very aggressive blitzer, kept doing it. He kept going back to it. And the last play of the game, the Ravens send a cover 0 look and Zay Jones is wide open for a touchdown. And that's how that game ends. So I think in this game, what we saw, we've seen more of that zone defense. I think you're down Marlon Humphrey, you're down Marcus Peters, you're down Deshaun Elliott. you don't have those all-pro corners anymore. You have to do a lot more with whether it be simplifying the defense, disguising coverages in a simpler way for these younger practice squad players to understand. The Ravens had Robert Jackson, who didn't play defensive snap all season up until week 15, on Devontae Adams for half the game. And that's not a matchup you want. So the Ravens were literally putting two guys on him in those really interesting and unique coverages where, Aaron Rodgers said after the game, that's the ultimate level of respect. So maybe the Ravens go back to what Jamar Chase based off what he did to them in week 7. But I think, yeah, the Ravens, I think, remember that game in week 7. They understand that, look, they got embarrassed at home by a Cincinnati team that, the Ravens had gotten the better of over the past couple of seasons. And I think a lot of Ravens fans overlooked them and said, the Ravens beat down Joe Burrow Brian Finley the other time twice last season, and it'll be a cakewalk. The Bengals have retooled their defense. The defense has been surprisingly good this year. I've been very impressed. I thought Mike Hilton, again, one of my favorite slots in the league, a tremendous addition for them. But the Ravens defense is going to have to figure out, one, how to make the Bengals one-dimensional and stop Joe Mixon. Mixon had a couple of big runs late in that game that really sealed the deal. If they can stop Mixon early, focus some of their resources on the pass game, the Ravens' rush defense has been very good. But it's a matter of being able to stop the Bengals' run game, focus resources on Jamar Chase. In terms of blitzing Joe Burrow, I think they will try it, but if it's not working, I think you have to kind of back off a little bit. And that's something where we've seen Don Martin, they'll do it. We've also seen him not do it. But against Aaron Rodgers, the Ravens were literally dropping everybody. They were rushing 3, rushing 4. And guys were still getting wide open because the Ravens are just so shot at cornerback right now. It's tough to really gauge who will be out there this week. But at the end of the day, look, the Bengals are a talented offense. They have the pieces to move the football down the field time and time again against the depleted Ravens defense. It hasn't been good against the pass all season. This isn't just a injury thing. They haven't been good all year, and you can date it back to Marcus Peters being lost. But yeah, the Ravens defense will have to throw some different looks at Joe Burrow, try to confuse a young quarterback because, look, the first time Burrow absolutely got the better of the Ravens defense.
Do you think they're going to treat Jamar that way? Because the past month, let's say, it's been the T. Higgins show, and then last week was the Tyler Boyd show. And that's the part of it is I think these defenses, especially after that Baltimore game, round 1, where Jamar just goes off. I think NFL defenses are like, all right, that's fine. We're going to throw all these resources at Jamar, but the past month, he hasn't been the most productive wide receiver on this team in any of the games. And it's been these other guys. Not that he hasn't produced, but not to that level. Are they going to throw it at Jamar? Are they going to try, maybe you try to take away T or Boyd, or what do you think it's still going to be? Let's try to take away number 1.
Well, I think they're definitely going to try to throw at least more at Jamar Chase than they did in week 7. But I think with this Bengals team, you have to respect those other weapons. Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, even CJ Uzoma, who torched the Ravens defense in week 7. So they have a lot of guys who can make things happen for them. And I don't know if they're going to necessarily put 2 defenders on Chase the whole game, but what we saw with Devontae Adams was they said, all right, we're going to cover Devontae Adams. We're going to shut him down as best we can. You beat us somewhere else. And Marquez Valdes-Scantling had a big game, and Allen Lazard made his catches. So maybe it's the same thing with the Bengals where the Ravens say, we're going to try to shut down Jamar Chase, put the resources there. And if T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are the guys to beat us, then those are the guys to beat us. And I think that's really interesting just because you have to respect all the offensive firepower the Bengals have accumulated over the years. And that's where I think this team really has to decide, who are we going to stop, who are we going to put one-on-one, and who's going to be the guy that we're going to say, all right, Cincinnati beat us with this guy. But this is a huge matchup, guys. One that, again, as I said, can define either team's season. Do you think that, assuming they play on Sunday, early predictions of who you think comes out on top in this one? Is it Cincinnati? Is it Baltimore? Who do you think it is?
I'll say this, James, because I know you're our predictions guy. The Ravens are so beat down and so injury ravaged in this game. It just doesn't even feel like the Ravens team. Like, they're wearing the same jerseys. They got the same coaches. Some of the players are the same, but I mean, the Bengals are looking at playing a shadow of Baltimore's roster that somehow managed to stay in games. And so that's a part that is interesting to me, is that despite how depleted the Ravens have been, you can't overlook it because they've been staying scrappy and in these games until late.
Yeah, that's the part of it that's tough, because I think on paper you'd say, all right, beat up Ravens team, Lamar at less than 100% or Tyler Huntley as well as he's played, you probably take Burrow and company. But they just went blow for blow with Aaron Rodgers in the Green Bay Packers. And I know that was at home and that changes things a little bit, but does it really? I think that was, they showed me a lot there. So this is going to be a really tough game. I think it's encouraging that Mixon was able to practice Wednesday. I was kind of surprised by that. But that's a big piece of it too. So I probably lean Bengals as of now, but that could change. Maybe Lamar Jackson gets some treatment on that ankle and is 100% because he's a freak when he's out there. I know that. And if he's out there, I think that this game could be a toss up if he's healthy, of course.
Kevin, what do you think?
It's so many. Well, one, it'll be interesting to see who's actually out there for the Ravens on Sunday or whatever day if the game is postponed. Hopefully we're not looking at that though. For the Ravens, they've shown up when it matters. This matters. I'm going to say Ravens. I've said it all week, but it really is a 50-50 game where if the Ravens are down to their 8th cornerback, if they're trotting us 3 out there on Sunday, like, you know, who's going to be playing for them? Because if they can get Chuck
I'm
Clark
available,
back
by the way.
Yeah, I am too. You know, we can go
I'll
out
jump
there.
ship. I'll wear Ravens right now if they pay me a game check. Sorry,
Please
Locked
do.
On Bengals listeners.
No.
I'm ready to go.
You're doing us a favor. The Locked On Bengals family here, James. Go try to man up Jamar Chase, please. I'd love it.
There are plenty of positions.
There's nothing I can't do with Built Bars. There's nothing.
Just eat 3 of those, and you're set. You know, there are plenty of positions to pick from. You could even double. You could go offense and defense. You could even do both. So I'm going to say Ravens in a close, like literally 1-point victory. Final score, I don't know, but the reason I'm picking them is because they've showed up when it matters, and that's why I'm going with Baltimore. Although, again, hopefully we get a game on Sunday. That's the key part.
Yeah.
All I want for Christmas. Sorry, James.
Yeah. No, you're good. I would give them the advantage. Like if you go advantages, they get the advantage special teams wise. They have the advantage coaching wise still, even though, you know, the Bengals are in a good. So that alone, late December, that coaching staff's been there, done that. Justin Tucker been there, done that. Great punter. Got a shot.
All I want for Christmas is an on-time Bengals-Ravens game. We'll see if we'll get one. Thanks for listening to the Locked On Bengals, Locked On Ravens crossover part 2. We'll look forward to summarizing these games after they happen on Sunday. We'll be back tomorrow on both Locked On Bengals and Locked On Ravens for our final episode before this second AFC North tilt as the fate of the division hangs in the balance. Thanks for listening to the Locked On Bengals, Locked On Ravens crossover.